All right, so before we start looking at the notes in our packet, we're just gonna see if we can figure out our rules for special kinds of slopes. So we've got two lines here. We've got a black and a red line. And the slope for this black line right here is positive because it's going up, and then it's 1 over 1. So our slope for the black line is positive 1. And if we look at our red line right here, I'm going to find some coordinates that I for sure know what the numbers are. And looky here, the slope for this line is 1 over 1, so the slope for our red line is 1. Now if we look at this set of red and black lines, as you can see, they're across from each other and they look like they're never going to touch. If we look at our black line here, I know that my slope's going to be negative. And my slope is negative 3 over 2 for my black line. I'm going to do the same thing for my red line. And this coordinate looks pretty good. And so does this one. Oh, looky here, negative 3 over 2. We have a pair of horizontal lines, and I really hope you remember that the slope for horizontal lines is 0. So the slope for my black line is 0, and the slope for my red line is 0. So after looking at all three pairs of lines from the previous slide, I hope you realize that these lines we were looking at were parallel. So parallel lines are lines that will never intersect. They can go horizontal, they can go vertical, they can kind of go diagonally, but they will never, ever, ever intersect. So I hope you noticed when you looked at the slope of parallel lines that you figured out that the slope of parallel lines are the same. So parallel lines have the same slope. Well, now we're going to switch gears here and look at a different set of lines. So I hope you see that there is a little box here where the black line and the red line intersect. And if you remember from last year, this little box right here means that they intersect at a 90-degree angle. And if I look at the black line here, I see that the slope for my black line is positive. And I'm going to find some coordinates that'll help me out. I'm going to go up for my rise. So my slope for the black line is positive 3 over 2. And then I look at my red line here, and I see that my line is sloping down, so I know my slope is going to be negative. And I find some points that I for sure know the coordinates, and I count down 1, 2, over 1, 2, 3. So the slope of my red line is negative 2/3. So the slope for my black line is 3 over 2. The slope for my red line is negative 2 over 3. I want you to start to try to think if you can figure out what kind of relationship they have with one another. Let's look at another set of lines that intersect at a 90-degree angle. My red line here is sloping down, so I know my slope is going to be negative. I'm going to find some points that I know for sure what my coordinates are. I'm going down 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the slope for my black line is negative 1/5. Now I look, or excuse me, that was my red line. So our red line is negative 1/5. Now if I look at the black line, I see that I'm going up, so I know it's positive. Got to find some points that I for sure know right here, and then right there. And I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1. So the slope for my black line is 5 over 1. So the slope for the black line is positive 5 over 1. And the slope for my red line is negative 1 over 5. So the pair of lines in the previous two slides were perpendicular. That means they intersect at right angles. What can you conclude about the slopes of perpendicular lines? Well, that last slide, we had the slope of 5 over 1, and then we had the slope of negative 1 over 5. I hope you're seeing that they're reciprocals. And remember, that's just a fancy math term for flipping a fraction. And then that one's positive and one's negative. So negative reciprocals. Now's a great time to make sure you've got your packet out. And we're looking at situation 5 here. Given special types of lines. Oh, here it is on the board. So parallel lines, if two lines are parallel, then they have the same slope. So let's look at this first example here. If a line A is parallel to line B, and the slope of line A is negative 3, what is the slope of line B? And write in your notes what you think the slope of line B is. And if I was with you right now, you would all go, negative 3. Now, a line parallel to the line y equals 2 over 3x minus 10 has what slope? Now, this equation is in our slope-intercept form. And remember, that's y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So I hope you realize that our slope is 2 over 3. And remember, we use m to signify slope in equations. So we've got parallel, same slope. Well, now we have perpendicular lines. And remember, perpendicular lines intersect at a 90-degree angle. If two lines are perpendicular, then the slopes of them are negative reciprocals of each other. So we're flipping them and then making them negative. So line A is perpendicular to line B, and if the slope of line A is 4, what is the slope of line B? Well, we know we have to make it negative, and then we've got to make it a reciprocal, so it's going to be negative 1 over 4. And then finally, a line perpendicular to the line y equals 2/3 x minus 10 has what slope? Well, I see my slope is not negative yet, so I'm going to make it negative. And then I'm going to find the reciprocal, which is just flipping the fraction. So negative 3 all over 2. So parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines are negative reciprocals. All right. So now what you're going to do is you are going to be doing an intercept scavenger hunt with the bright orange papers that are taped around the room. Your substitute teacher will give you a copy of the scavenger hunt answer sheet. You are going to be looking at the orange papers. You may start at any of the sheets around the room and solve the problem on the bottom half of the paper. So you're solving the bottom half of the paper. You're going to find your answer on the top half of another sheet around the room. So you're going to solve it on the bottom, and you're going to find another card with your answer on the top half. So you need to put your answer, your work, so you're going to put your answer right here on the bottom. You're going to put your work here in that big spot. And then there's this really long little box right here that you are going to name the picture on your answer sheet. Each picture is going to have a little construction-y kind of doodad here that you need to write what it is. And that's how I will know you are correct, because you're going to go in a loop. You're finished when you end up back on the problem you began with. So the answer that you have for number 1, you're going to have for number 13, and then you know you're done. All right, I hope you guys are going to have a great rest of your day, and I will see you via video tomorrow.